Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the FTC allegedly looking to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, NetEase leaking the reasons why their partnership with Blizzard had to end, the Diablo horror anthology releasing, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. Now before I move on, just a quick word from this video's sponsor, Established Titles, a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping with global reforestation efforts. Do you ever think it would be cool to hold the title of Lord or Lady like in Game of Thrones? Well, with Established Titles, you can officially do so. You buy a personal lordship or ladyship title pack with dedicated land in Scotland. Basically, you're buying a tiny plot of land, at least 1 square foot. It has a unique plot number, and it's on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland. And as per ancient Scottish tradition, landowners were referred to as lairds, aka lord or lady. Then you receive your official certificate with a crest, and with every order, Established Titles plants a tree, working with global charity partners, 1 tree planted, and trees for the future. So not only do these make for great novelty gifts for people, or for yourself, you're also helping the environment. And in any place that you can use Mr. or Mrs., you can actually use Lord or Lady now. So on a credit card or on a plane ticket. And the first 200 people who will buy a title pack using my link will effectively have their plot next to my plot, at least within a few minutes walking distance. So depending on how many of you want to go for this, we can build our own little kingdom of Rikers, Raiders, Lords, and Ladies. Now again, I think this makes for an amazing last minute gift, and Established Titles is actually running a massive Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use code Riker, you can get another 10% off. Just go to establishedtitles.com/Riker to get your gifts now and help support the channel. Starting with some quick God of War news. The game is officially the fastest selling first-party launch game in PlayStation history, having sold 5.1 million copies in its debut week. Meanwhile, the game director of God of War Ragnarok has expressed that he'd like to work on a Castlevania game next, if someone would give him the license. The Castlevania franchise has been on ice for a while now, the last major title released in 2014. But the recent Netflix series actually drummed up a huge amount of interest in the franchise. Now, in recent times, Castlevania developer Konami has seemed willing to open up to licensing its properties in general to other studios, but Castlevania has always been their baby, and it does seem like current Castlevania projects are being done in-house. In other news, the Steam Autumn 2022 sale is live. Although if you got an email, they might have called it the Steam Summer Sale. Someone forgot to change a word. And along with this, we also have the Steam Awards launching. Now, you can currently nominate games for Steam's various awards. Then it'll be during the winter sale that you'll be able to vote on those nominees. And then finally on January 3rd, winners will be announced. If you want an easy reference to see what games are on sale, you can follow the link in the description below. In some Valheim news, we got the gameplay trailer for the next update, Mistlands, and it is full of mystical, magical mysteries. The Mistlands update is available now for public beta testing, but if you'd rather wait for all the bugs to be ironed out and for it to launch out of beta, you're going to need to wait a little longer. That said, you've already waited a long time for this update, so what's a little longer? Hopefully in time for Christmas vacation. In other news, as per the Golden Joystick Awards, Elden Ring is the ultimate game of the year. Elden Ring also won the Golden Joysticks Award for Best Visual Design, Best Multiplayer Game, as well as the Critics' Choice. And its developer From Software won Studio of the Year. And these awards are very well deserved. Elden Ring allowed the relatively niche genre of Souls-like games, you know, those gruelingly punishing games that don't typically reach a wide audience, to reach a wider audience, a more casual audience than ever, and become part of gaming's cultural zeitgeist for a considerable time. I mean, arguably it still is. In an interview at the end of the awards, Elden Ring's game director, Hidetaka Miyazaki, promised to continue making, quote, more and more interesting games. Then in other news, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Complete Edition Next-Gen trailer released. This free update for all owners of The Witcher 3 will include ray tracing, DLSS, dynamic resolution scaling, SSR, a photo mode, as well as an HD rework, of course. It also includes some armor sets from the Netflix series, including the Nilfgaard Ballsack armor, The update releases on December 14th. In some quick Pokemon news, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the fastest selling games in Nintendo history, having sold 10 million copies in just 3 days. While there were issues at launch, glitches, performance issues, nonetheless, we're seeing good reviews here. The open world gameplay in particular is being praised, and critics are saying the spirit of the first Pokemon games, Red and Blue, are being captured again. In an update to a story we've covered in the past about NVIDIA's latest graphics card, the RTX 4090, which was melting and burning on people, well, now NVIDIA has been served a class action lawsuit that accuses the company of selling a defective and dangerous product that should not have been sold in its current state. However, NVIDIA has since released a statement saying that every unit they've inspected that suffered this meltdown showed clear signs that the power cable was not plugged in all the way, meaning this will likely get chalked up to user error. Then in some Activision Blizzard news, according to rumors, the Microsoft acquisition of the company may run into a snag. America's Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is apparently likely to file an antitrust lawsuit to block the acquisition, believing that Microsoft would have an unfair advantage in the market if it bought Activision Blizzard. As a reminder, Microsoft wants to buy Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, and Activision Blizzard has agreed. But such a major acquisition needs to pass regulatory scrutiny to ensure it doesn't break antitrust laws and thus prevent fair market competition. Regulatory bodies in 16 countries need to clear the acquisition, but so far only 2 have done so, Brazil and Saudi Arabia. According to Politico.com, who claim to have an exclusive on this story, the FTC staff that's reviewing the potential deal is skeptical of Microsoft's arguments that the deal will not break antitrust laws, and they may, as early as next month, move forward with the case against the deal. Meanwhile, Sony has continued to be the greatest and most vocal opponent to the acquisition, with their main concern being that if Call of Duty becomes exclusive to Xbox, then there's no way that Sony can compete in the market. So apparently, Microsoft has offered Sony a 10-year deal to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation if Sony agrees to stop opposing the acquisition. Then Google is apparently also opposing the deal. Google allegedly accused Microsoft of deliberately degrading the quality of Game Pass on Google Chrome in order to steer people towards Microsoft products. And they're claiming that this would only get worse if they bought Activision Blizzard. But Google is getting accused by Epic of paying Activision $360 million and Riot Games $30 million, and about 20 other developers other non-disclosed sums in order to get them to not create an app store that competes with Google Play. So, you know, everyone's pointing the finger at everyone here while they all have their other hand in the cookie jar. And just for the record, Activision disputes Epic's claims. They say that this did not happen. Google did not bribe them. Now, back to the acquisition. They got until July 2023 for the acquisition to go through. If it doesn't go through by then, it must be abandoned. And a lawsuit that's filed in December or January is unlikely to be resolved by that time, which means if we do have a lawsuit filed, the deal probably won't go through. On to some very quick Path of Exile news. The devs dropped another manifesto for 3.20, and it's more good news for players. We won't get into details, but in short, players won't feel compelled to rush straight to map bosses in order to maximize their rewards. A lot of the reward structures around Eldritch Altars have been modified. You can check the manifesto out for yourself. For the full details, link in the description. But this continues to make the upcoming expansion look increasingly promising. In Blizzard news, in a follow-up to last week's story about NetEase and Blizzard ending their 14-year partnership, an industry insider is reporting that a number of different companies are now in talks with Blizzard to find a new partner to publish Blizzard's games in China. By Chinese law, Blizzard cannot publish games in China without working with a Chinese company. And according to the insider, a whole host of companies are in talks with Blizzard, including Tencent, the biggest name, and the one we expect to win out. But there's also Perfect World, Bilibili, and Nuverse. This is according to Chinese media outlet Keijing. The insider further claims that tensions between Blizzard and NetEase were obvious from the start of the year, and as of then it seemed like the relationship would fall apart. And Tencent has been talking to Blizzard for at least a year, likely because they knew the renewal period for Blizzard and NetEase's contract was coming up. However, the insider believes that Tencent is unlikely to take over the contract, as it'll cost them a lot of money to do so, and the industry is in a downturn right now, especially in China. The insider believes that ByteDance is a strong contender, as they have a lot of money right now and a desire to expand further into the gaming market. Now, the original Chinese publisher for World of Warcraft, the Nine, is allegedly in talks with Microsoft, just going straight over Blizzard's head entirely, expressing a desire to once again publish World of Warcraft in China for a fifth of its total value. Another possibility the insider mentions is that NetEase will actually once again partner with Blizzard once the Microsoft acquisition of the company goes through, because at that point, Bobby Kotick is unlikely to remain on board and NetEase would be negotiating with a new CEO. The insider basically claims that, or seems to suggest that Kotick himself is the main reason that negotiations have failed. Now, allegedly, there are 4 conditions that Blizzard imposed on NetEase in order to renew the contract that made this deal fall apart. And those 4 conditions are: number 1, Blizzard wants a higher share ratio than before, more than 50% of revenue and net profit. Number 2, NetEase has to make other mobile games for Blizzard to release worldwide, but NetEase will only get a share of revenue from the Chinese market. Number 3, Blizzard is making demands revolving around game approval in China. There's this whole lengthy process in China to get a game approved for publication. It can take months, even years sometimes. Especially recently, this has really slowed down. And whatever Blizzard is allegedly demanding here is something that NetEase simply cannot guarantee. So I'm guessing Blizzard's demanding that the game approval process takes no more than X number of months. And I mean, NetEase can't agree to that. They can't promise that. It's not in their control. And lastly, number 4, upon signing the renewal contract, NetEase has to pay 2 years worth of cooperation money in advance, which would equal hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, meanwhile, it could take months to a year before Blizzard can turn on its game servers again in China after they shut down in early 2023, when the partnership with NetEase officially ends. Now again, all of this is according to a Chinese insider and only paints NetEase's side of the story, so take it all with a grain of salt. On to some Diablo news. Some Diablo titles are currently on massive discount. Diablo 2 Resurrected in particular, 50% off. I think this is the first time D2R went on sale. We also have Diablo 3's Eternal Collection at 25% off, and this is all part of the Black Friday sale, so it likely won't last much longer. If you're a Diablo 2 fan, a Diablo fan, or an ARPG fan, I highly recommend grabbing Diablo 2 Resurrected. In other Diablo news, people have begun receiving their copies of Tales from the Horadric Library. I'm in Canada and mine hasn't even shipped yet, but lucky Redditor Iluar shared this image of his copy along with the table of contents. The book is an anthology of horror stories that take place in Diablo's world of Sanctuary. And the stories include The Gospel of Death, The Rose of Conduras, A Collar of Thorns, The Caravan, A Whiff of Salt, The Tomb of Talrasha, When the Dark Seeps In, and Beyond That Door There Lies No Light. There's not a whole lot we can glean from the titles, but The Tomb of Talrasha is sure to be the most lore-focused one. We visit the Tomb of Talrasha in Diablo 2 at the end of Act 2, and it's where the Horadric mage Talrasha was chained up after he sacrificed himself to contain Baal's soul stone within him, and he wrestled with the Lord of Destruction for centuries until the Dark Wanderer freed him. I'm willing to bet that A Whiff of Salt will somehow include someone being turned into a pillar of salt. I feel like I remember a dev talking about something like that back at BlizzCon 2019. The Rose of Conduras may refer to Diablo Immortal's Blood Rose, which is near the Forgotten Tower in the Black Marsh in Conduras. The Gospel of Death may refer to Malfield, but I doubt it. Death is just a very common theme. The Caravan may refer to Warrior's Caravan, but probably not. When I get my copy, I'd like to make a video talking about the stories and the lore therein. Also, in case you missed it, folks, I released a video this week on a panel with former Diablo devs in which they discussed the history of the Diablo franchise and revealed how it almost imploded. Their word. Be sure to check it out. And lastly, in Diablo news, Carbot released his next episode of Diablol 2. This one is How to Druid, and it is completely spot on, as usual. And that's going to wrap up this week's video. But do be sure to have checked out last week's video, in which we discussed Diablo 4's open world. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon, and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. As a reminder, folks, we're doing our annual Raider banner. That thing hanging on the wall behind me. If you want to get your name on the 2022 Raider banner, all you got to do is be a Patreon supporter, even at the $1 tier, by December 1st. So just another week to go, folks. $1 is all it takes to get your name on that banner, and it'll be available for sale in the shop. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.